Daniel never planned to stay in Dry Creek. The town looked half dead the moment he drove in. Sagging porches, boarded windows, a silence so heavy it seemed to press down on him. He came only because of the inheritance, a house left to him by an uncle he barely remembered. The lawyer's letter had been short, almost hurried, as if it wanted the paper out of his hands as fast as possible. The house stood at the very edge of town, alone, its roof bent like a broken spine. Even from the road, Daniel felt it watching him. Paint peeled off its walls in long strips, and the yard was choked with weeds. The front gate hung open, groaning when he pushed through. The air smelled of dampness, rust, and something metallic, faint but sour. Inside, the house was colder than outside. Dust coated every surface, but the silence was wrong. It wasn't empty silence. It was listening silence. His footsteps echoed too loud, bouncing as if the house had a hollow chest. In the kitchen, a single chair faced the wall. Upstairs, a mirror leaned cracked against the hallway, reflecting him in jagged fragments. He told himself the place was just old, just abandoned. That night, the scratching began. At first, it was faint, like rats behind the walls. Then it grew sharper, deliberate, nails dragging wood. Sometimes it stopped the moment he turned his head, as if whatever made it was waiting for him to listen. He tried to sleep, but around midnight came a heavy thud from inside the closet. He sat upright in the dark, staring at the door. No movement, only the sound of breathing, slow and ragged from behind the thin wood. When he opened it, nothing, just the smell, damp, sour, almost like wet earth. The following days passed in unease. He noticed little things, muddy footprints appearing on the floor though he hadn't stepped outside, the wallpaper curling in long strips like torn skin. Sometimes the pipes groaned with a rhythm too steady, too much like a heartbeat. In the cellar, he found the door. Not the one to the basement stairs, a smaller one, sunken into the concrete floor, iron and rusted. A hatch with deep gouges scored into the metal like someone had clawed at it from below. He tried not to think about it, but at night he dreamed of fists pounding against that iron. The neighbors avoided him. The grocery clerk stopped talking the moment he mentioned the address. One old woman whispered only once as he left the store, "That house doesn't keep its dead." By the fifth night, he was drinking to drown the noises. It didn't work. The scratching grew louder, now moving across the walls, following him from room to room. In the bathroom mirror, he saw movement behind his reflection, a shadow that leaned close, its grin stretching too wide, teeth like broken glass. He spun, but the room was empty. The air grew heavy, thick with the stink of rot. His uncle's belongings lay scattered in boxes, but in one of them he found a notebook. The pages were smeared, words scrawled in desperate ink. "It eats. It eats through the walls. It eats us. I can hear them still, screaming under the floor. I thought I could starve it. I was wrong. It only waits." That night, Daniel woke to the sound of the cellar hatch groaning open. He didn't want to go down. His body shook, sweat cold on his skin, but his feet moved anyway, dragging him toward the basement as if the house pulled invisible strings. The hatch lay open. A smell hit him like rotting flesh, wet earth, and rusted iron. Something shifted in the dark below, a scrape, then another, like bones dragged across stone. He shone his phone light down. Hands. Dozens of them, gray and raw, reaching up from the hole. Fingers too long, nails cracked and dripping black fluid. Faces followed, melting, stretched with mouths frozen mid-scream. They crawled up the walls like insects, skin peeling, eyes rolled white. Daniel stumbled back, but the hatch slammed shut on its own, cutting off the vision, though the stench lingered. He fled upstairs, but the house was no longer the same. The wallpaper pulsed as if veins ran beneath it. Floorboards swelled and split, leaking black slime that smelled of bile. In the hallway, a figure stood. His uncle, or what was left. The face sagged, jaw unhinged too wide, tongue black and swollen. "It doesn't let go," the corpse gurgled. "It only takes in." Then, its body split down the chest, spilling wet ropes of organ and teeth, collapsing into the floor. The house shook, windows slammed shut. Something heavy moved in the walls, pressing outward, forming the shapes of bodies screaming behind the plaster. The ceiling dripped thick red, raining down on him. The lights flickered, and in each flash, he saw the rooms change, furniture rotting, shadows crawling, the walls opening like jaws. Daniel ran for the front door, but the wood had fused into the frame. His fist struck it until skin tore, but the gore only groaned, swallowing the blood into its grain. A voice whispered from all around, deep and wet, layered with dozens of mouths. "You are home." The stairs warped, twisting upward like a throat. The house pushed him, pulling him toward the rooms above. The air burned with decay, and every breath tasted of metal and dirt. On the landing, mirrors lined the walls. In each, his reflection was wrong. Faces twisted, bones exposed, eyes gouged out, each one grinning. He screamed, but the reflections screamed louder, their voices shattering glass. Shards flew into his skin, slicing deep. Blood ran down his arms, but the glass did not fall to the ground. Instead, it hung in the air, trembling, then slowly pressed into his flesh like hungry teeth. Pain ripped through him. He fell, but the floor opened like a gaping maw, and he crashed into blackness. When he woke, he was standing. The house was silent again, calm. The walls no longer bled. The hatch in the basement was gone, as if it had never existed. For a moment, he thought he had dreamed it all, until he saw his hands. They were no longer his. The skin was gray, stretched too thin, and under the nails black liquid dripped. His reflection in the cracked mirror smiled back at him, mouth too wide, eyes pits of endless dark. And in that silence, the house itself seemed to sigh, satisfied. The next morning, neighbors passing by glanced at the windows. They froze. Behind a glass, Daniel stood motionless, staring out. His lips curled into an impossible grin, teeth jagged and wrong. His eyes were bottomless black. The house had taken him, and it was waiting for the next.
Claire Parker had lived in New York long enough to forget what silence sounded like. Horns, sirens, phones, endless voices. It ate her alive day after day until all she wanted was to vanish. The stress carved her nights into fragments of restless sleep. Her hands shook with caffeine and deadlines. When she finally collapsed at her desk, her boss suggested she'd take a week off before she broke completely. She remembered the cabin immediately. Her family's old summer house by Black Hollow Lake, deep in Vermont woods. No one had visited in years. The thought of a week away from people, surrounded only by forest and water, felt like salvation. When she arrived, the sun was low, bleeding gold across the lake. The cabin looked older than she remembered, its logs darkened, windows streaked with grime. The woods around it were thicker, swallowing the path. Still, the air was cleaner than anything she had breathed in months, and she smiled for the first time in weeks. The first night was almost peaceful. She sat on the porch with a glass of wine, watching the water. The lake was black under the moon, perfectly still. Not even a ripple. Too still. She told herself it was beautiful, ignored the unease prickling her spine. Inside, the house groaned like old bones settling. She brushed it off. It had always done that. But sometime after midnight, she awoke to the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow, heavy. Someone circling the cabin. Her heart raced. She grabbed a flashlight, forced herself to look. Nothing. The porch was empty. The woods beyond swallowed in darkness. She tried to laugh it off, but when she closed the door, she noticed muddy footprints leading up the steps. Bare feet, far too large. The next day, she tried to distract herself with walks along the lake. The forest pressed too close, the air damp and stale. Sometimes she swore she heard whispers between the trees, just low enough she couldn't catch the words. The water, black and glassy, never rippled, not even when she threw stones. Each rock sank without a sound, as if the lake swallowed it whole. That night, the knocking began. From under the floor, a hollow thump every few minutes, like fists pounding wood. She froze on the couch, clutching the blanket, listening as it moved across the boards beneath her. Thump, thump, slow, deliberate, as if whatever it was knew she was listening. She barely slept. By morning, she felt half mad, exhausted. In the kitchen, she found her coffee cup shattered on the floor, though she hadn't touched it. A message scrawled across the counter in dark, sticky letters. Leave. She did what she should have done then. She packed. But when she tried to start the car, the engine refused to turn. Her phone had no signal. The road back down the mountain looked longer than she remembered. Almost wrong.
That night, the pounding grew violent. The walls shook. The windows rattled in their frames. She hid in the bedroom, clutching a kitchen knife as the door shuddered under unseen blows. Then silence. She held her breath, waiting. The handle turned. The door creaked open, but no one stood there. Just the hallway, dark and stinking of earth and rot. She forced herself to step out, trembling, knife ready. The house had changed. The walls sweated with black slime. Floorboards bulged as if something crawled beneath them. She heard breathing, wet, ragged, all around her. In the reflection of the hallway window, she saw it, a figure standing just behind her. Pale skin stretched too tight, mouth torn wider than any human's, teeth crooked and wet. She spun. Nothing. But the smell remained, choking, metallic. The pounding returned, this time from the cellar. She tried to bar the door, but it burst open, and the smell of rotting mud filled the cabin. Something dragged itself up the stairs. Not one thing, many. Hands, gray and bloated, clawed at the steps. Faces bloated with water, eyes white, mouths gasping like fish. The lake had come inside. Claire screamed and ran. The house bent around her, hallways stretching too long, rooms wrong and unfamiliar. Every mirror showed her reflection, dead, drowned, eyes open wide in black water. She smashed through the porch door into the freezing night air. The forest pulsed with whispers, branches snapping as shapes moved between trees. She didn't stop. Her bare feet tore on stones, lungs burning, but she ran toward the only light she saw, the faint glow of the road below. Behind her, the cabin roared, wood splitting, glass shattering, voices shrieking in inhuman chorus. She never looked back. By dawn, she stumbled onto the asphalt, bloodied and shaking. A passing truck nearly hit her, the driver slamming brakes in shock. He rushed to her side, but when she tried to speak, no sound came. Only the reek of mud clung to her clothes, her hair, her skin. When she finally turned, through the trees, she saw the lake one last time, perfectly still, perfectly black. And on the porch of the cabin, something stood, watching her, grinning with her own face.
Jack Miller had been driving trucks for nearly 20 years, and if there was one thing he knew, it was that America's highways could drive a man insane at night. Mile after mile of black asphalt, the endless whine of tires, the glow of headlights that felt like they were cutting through an abyss. That night, the road through Arizona felt different. The desert stretched wide and dead on both sides, the stars swallowed by clouds. His radio crackled with static, though he hadn't touched the dial. Then, in the hiss of white noise, a voice whispered, "Don't stop. Don't stop tonight." Jack frowned, smacked the radio. The voice was gone, just static. Half an hour later, he passed a road sign. The reflective letters were twisted, rusted, but he could still make them out. Instead of a town name or mileage, someone had spray painted across it in black, "Keep driving." Jack laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. Just kids messing around, just bad reception, nothing to worry about. But the night pressed heavier, the air in the cab stale, his eyes burning with exhaustion. At one point, he swore he saw a man standing on the side of the highway, tall, thin, with a crooked grin, raising his arm in a mock wave. But when the truck passed, there was no one there. By the time he spotted the neon glow of a motel sign in the distance, Jack felt like he was losing his grip. His logbook screamed for rest, his eyelids heavier than lead. The sign flickered red and blue against the desert night.
The parking lot was empty, except for his rig. The building itself sagged like it hadn't been touched in decades, though the neon still buzzed. Inside, the lobby smelled of mold and old smoke. A woman stood behind the desk, pale as paper, her hair gray and stringy. She slid a key toward him without a word. The tag read, "Room 6." Jack carried his duffel down the silent hall. The carpet was stained, walls peeling, each door identical. His room was worse. One flickering lamp, sheets yellowed with age, a TV that clicked on by itself showing nothing but static. He collapsed on the bed anyway, telling himself he'd just get a few hours. Sometime past midnight, a sound woke him, scratching from inside the walls. He sat up, heart hammering. The scratching grew louder, turning into thuds, like fists pounding wood. Then a voice, muffled, hoarse. "Don't stay. Get out." Jack stumbled to the door, yanking it open. The hallway was dark, all lights dead, carpet wet under his boots. The smell hit him then, rot, wet earth, and something metallic. He turned toward the lobby. Every door along the hall had opened, and from each, figures stepped out. Guests, or what had once been guests. Skin gray, eyes hollow sockets leaking black fluid, mouths open in silent screams. They reached toward him with clawed hands, dripping filth onto the floor. Jack ran. The lobby was worse. The woman at the desk now grinned with a mouth too wide, teeth broken and black, her eyes gone. The walls pulsed, breathing in and out like lungs, plaster splitting with each inhale. The neon outside flickered through the windows, spelling not vacancy, but something else. You stay. Jack sprinted back to his truck, hands trembling, fumbling for the keys. Behind him, the motel door slammed open, and the horde of rotting figures poured out, crawling across the asphalt like insects. Their whispers filled the night. "Don't stop! Don't stop!" The engine roared to life. He slammed the pedal, tearing out of the lot. In his mirrors, the motel burned with sickly neon light, the dead surging after him until the desert swallowed them whole. For hours he drove, shaking, sweat pouring down his face. The highway stretched endless, no towns, no exits, just black road. When the sky began to pale with dawn, Jack finally breathed. He had made it. He was alive. But when he glanced at the fuel gauge, his stomach turned to ice. It hadn't moved. And ahead, on the horizon, the neon glow returned.